Hi, I'm Lila, librettist at large, and today I'm talking about female librettists. We live in a culture obsessed by storytelling. We analyse the personal lives of pop stars through their latest hit, watch Instagram stories of celebrities, and critique the perspectives of news outlets, analysing for bias and agenda. In an age in which debate is centred around identity as argument, we understand that any story reveals the person telling it. Just as no journalist or historian can ever be objective, no storyteller can step out of their story. Who they are matters. I'm interested in who is crafting the story in opera and how that affects the content. So, what do we know? Bad news. No one has bothered to collect data on the percentage of works by female librettists on US stages. Good news. The lack of attention to this issue suggests that we may be onto something. More good news, we do have figures for the UK, which indicate that only 8% of operas on UK stages are written by women. I'm voting for collection of this data in the US, just the way we do for composers. And if you agree, please write to Opera America and to the brand new Librettist Guild and tell them you want this data collected, because knowledge is power. Promoting gender equity in the US opera industry is a big task. We're at the beginning of a period of historic opportunity in which the opera industry is being invited by broader cultural trends to hold up an unflinching mirror to itself, to see who has been missing at the table. We know it's not just women. That opportunity comes with a responsibility to make real change, a concerted, continuous effort on the part of every person in this industry. So, why should we focus limited industry time and resources on female storytellers? For 4 main reasons. 1. Because the story is where the many-layered process of creating an opera begins. 2. Because developing any untapped talent resource in any industry always creates an infusion of high-quality work, lifting the artistic bar for everyone. 3rd, because shifts towards gender equity in related media demonstrate that platforming brilliant female talent can yield major commercial dividends and create sweeping audience response. And we want that. And number 4, because we've realised the system as it exists isn't fair, and we want to change that. So why hasn't it seemed like there's a gender problem amongst librettists? Well, it could be that no one really knew that we existed until recently. Opera nerds, I challenge you to name 5 librettists. Yeah. Inequality is also hard to fix because it isn't always obvious. That 8% number we mentioned does not reflect the number of women writing and self-producing without commission. That 8% doesn't reflect women working in education, outreach, academia, or for fringe companies with minuscule budgets. As the role of librettist has professionalised, women have been amongst the first to seek and gain qualification, the first to generate work because it isn't offered. As a result of female effort, 8% does not reflect the visibility of women librettists. What it does reflect, though, is who is making a living from their art, men, and who ends up on main stages, men. It reflects decisions made through streamlined processes by small numbers of hard-working, time-poor, largely white male gatekeepers, spending limited commissioning money with very anxious boards behind them. These pressures are real and can reinforce processes that have yielded the same results for a long time. This is what I call the mentality of manufacture. In other words, if something has worked in the past, don't change the formula. But changing the formula is integral to creation and, in fact, to commercial success. Just ask Apple or the producers of Black Panther. So, to recap, first, we need to find out the extent of the problem, and then we decide how to address it. So how do we do that? I have 5 practical suggestions, all previously applied by adjacent industries with great results. Number 1, we must examine our processes for bias. Number 2, we must reject the usual suspect attitude to commissioning. Number 3, we must hold open submission processes for house commissions. Number 4, we need to commit as an industry to equal ratios in commissioning and hiring so our stages reflect our society. And number 5, and this is the most complicated, we need to look for the structurally overlooked and develop them, for the people with a track record outside the mainstream industry. So when people notice the absence of a particular group at the top of a profession, they often try raising recruitment of that group from outside it, rather than addressing the structural bias which prevents members of that group from ascending within the profession. In other words, sometimes the answer is already in the room. It's just not being paid attention to. A final thought. This is probably the best time in history to be a woman, but our opera stages remain in the past. As such, they remain frightening places to be female because our stages inevitably reflect the oppressive structures of the past and the present. Only female writers can adjust this imbalance, and to do that, they need the very same resources given to their male forebears. So why should we make these changes? Isn't opera doing just fine? In a word, no. As long as opera stages tell stories of women controlled and victimized by men, as long as they reflect unequal gender roles, as long as they reinforce the perspective that great, read adequately remunerated, art makers are male and white, audiences will continue to call our bluff and our form out of touch. They will vote with their feet, and they should. The majority of opera tickets are bought by women. Commissioning women librettists is not about removing the right of any storyteller to tell the stories that speak to them. It is about making our stages reflect the multiplicity of views and voices and stories that make up our city, our country, and our world. Commissioning female librettists is about creating future audiences who don't ask at the interval, "So when does she die?" If you've enjoyed this talk today or you have feelings about it, please let me know in the comments. And if you want more content like this, then please follow me on YouTube, Librettist at Large, and on Instagram at the same handle. Thanks for joining me.